like a few years ago, you had, I guess, on this topic, like a health issue
Yeah.
with the big letter C. You had
Yeah.
cancer.
Yep.
How did you, with all the knowledge that you had in the personal development field, like, was there any one thing that sort of helped navigate that journey through it and on the other side of it?
Yeah, and I think I had the same experience that we have with everything that goes wrong. Now, the word wrong, if you listen to cancer survivors, you'll hear a lot of them saying the gift of cancer, which means we reframed it and made it right. But the experience for me, well, I think was very similar to a lot of people, and that is, well, what have I done wrong? So here's this thing that turns up that you can't see, that you don't know was happening inside of you. And I haven't robbed banks and been nasty to people. So what have I done wrong that this should happen to me? That's kind of a very common normal reaction. Is it's sort of like, holy moly, I thought that happened to other people. And so um, I especially had that because by that time I'd been working in the personal development field for 20 years because the cancer was actually in 2003. So, I'm just celebrating the 20th anniversary of getting through that. Feels like yesterday, but it's actually 20 years ago.
Wow.
And so when I cast my mind back to it, the first thing was to fall in a heap and go, why me? And this is awful and I can't do anything about it, etc. And throw myself into the hands of the professionals. And so the doctor said, you need an operation. In hindsight, I think that operation was not the smartest move, but I went and had what's called a radical prostatectomy because I had aggressive prostate cancer. So they removed the prostate gland. It's a relatively common thing nowadays, but it's a 6-hour operation, big deal, big slice down my stomach, a week in hospital, all that. Nowadays, they actually do that operation with keyhole surgery, and they do it in day surgery, and you turn up and you take a number, and they go in and they do it with a robot, and you walk home. So
Wow.
it's a little bit different now. And actually walking home is part of the recovery. But I then went into a pretty difficult period where they did the operation. We had no health insurance at the time, so it cost 30 grand. So, it was a bit of a hit on several levels. And they, at the end of the operation, then they said, well, we've done everything we can, now it's up to you. And I said, this was supposed to cure it. And they go, oh, no, we've just done the best we can, up to you. Come back in 6 weeks, we'll give you a blood test and that'll tell us whether you live or die. They didn't say those words, but that was my interpretation of it. And so during that 6 weeks, you can imagine that was a long period of time, that 6 weeks waiting to get my sentence, so to speak. And my wife, Mary, came to me and she said, listen, honey, we love you to bits, we can't tell you how much we love you. This is her and our 2 daughters. But you're a nightmare, mate. Could you just go do some of that shit that you teach other people? Because you're nearly impossible to live with.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of Unlocked from Within. Today we have Paul Blackburn from Quantum Orange, an international acclaimed author and leader in the human potential movement. Paul has taught more than 400,000 people on 4 continents on how to reach their personal and professional potential. During the 39 years as a success coach, author, instructor, and a keynote speaker, Paul has trained over 350 plus life, business, and mindset coaches and has held one of the largest firewalks. He was also appointed by the Australian government to its business advisory panel and is a partner in a multi-million-dollar business operating in over 100 countries. I've had the pleasure over the years to have Paul as a mentor and coach personally and have been to his workshops and courses. I've also got certified to be one of his mindset coaches. Let's welcome Paul to Unlocked from Within. Hey, Paul, welcome to Unlocked from Within.
Hey, Marty, how you going?
Yeah, good. How you been?
Yeah, awesome, mate. Awesome.
Yep.
Full of beans and loving life and pretty excited about the opportunity, despite the fact that I'm 71. I'm kind of looking forward, not backwards. So I've lived a long and productive life, but I actually don't worry too much about that. I kind of, the potential of what I could do today and tomorrow has got me excited. So, I'm a bit of a forward focused kind of a guy.
That's awesome. It's been a few years since we've caught up in person. I think, it was just before COVID hit. So it's good to catch up and have this chat that I hope it'll help a lot of other people and the people in the audience with what we had to deal with that last 2 years. And more of the uncertainty that looks like it's on the horizon.
Looks like it's permanent now, mate. It's kind of
Yeah.
like, here's a pandemic nobody wanted, but we all had to have, and
Yep.
it was inevitable, and no one knew when it was going to turn up, but everybody knew it was going to turn up, and then it did, and we kind of went through that whole thing, and everybody said, won't it be great when it's over? But then the next thing just showed up, and
Now we're
I
dealing
think
with
we live
high
in
interest
times.
rates. Yeah, high
Yeah,
interest rates.
interest rates, cost of living,
Inflation.
inflation. Business owners can't find people to work for them. Most people who are looking for work don't like the business owners that they meet. So yeah, it's kind of artificial intelligence, you name it. There's massive change, massive, and I think that will continue. That we should reasonably expect to that. And I'm saying to my clients, like, if you're not spending 15 to 20% of your time upgrading your knowledge and updating what it is that you're probably falling behind. 15 to 20% of your time means 1 day a week, mate. If you've got a 5-day-a-week job, that's kind of, a lot of people are just not going to have that time. It's not, they're already, their job is full time as it is, let alone the need to upgrade or update. So that means a lot of people are going to fall off the wagon and their skills will no longer be useful. So I don't think the changes are the problem. I think keeping up with the changes is probably the problem.
Yeah. Like we've got whether it officially gets announced or not, we've got the recession that could be a depression worldwide hinging. And then there's all that talk now of the AI and are you incorporating and using ChatGPT, which a lot of people are still like, what, haven't even worked out what does that mean? What's ChatGPT?
It's a surprising thing to see that the fastest thing that's ever hit the planet, right? They went from nobody to 100 million users in 60 days. Nothing's ever gone that quick, right?
Wow.
And yet there are people who never heard of it.
Yeah.
And go,
it's just sinking in now, and then it's a fascinating time, all happening all at the same time.
And I suppose the big problem there is we go 100 million users, that's a lot of people, but as a percentage of, what is it, 7.8 billion, maybe it's not so big.
So it's interesting times. And I'd like to delve into, I guess, for the audience, a bit about your upbringing and how it all started.
Okay, I presume you don't want me to start with I was born at a young age. So.
No.
Mate, born and raised in Sydney in a middle-class family, and went through high school and was middle of the class. And so nothing spectacular, either great or bad. So, the bad thing, I wasn't brilliant. The good thing is I wasn't hopeless. So I disliked being average, and but I didn't know what to do about it. So I end up training as a high school teacher, and I worked as a high school teacher in the western suburbs of Sydney for 7 years. Recognised that the brick wall at the back of my classroom was actually my horizon, and panicked. Never really liked it. Did reasonably well at it, but it never didn't float my boat. And so my wife and I, we're still married. So we've been married 47 years. So my wife and I decided that we wanted to do something entrepreneurial, something different. And so she stayed a teacher, and I went off, on the big adventure to find my way in life. By that time I was 30, so I don't know that you can say find my way in life like a teenager, but that's what it felt like. And I had 2 or 3 years of repeated failure. So everything I tried didn't work, and or I couldn't make it work. And a friend said, "Mate, you're well back then we didn't have the word, but I would have ended up what we now call depressed." And that was just 2 or 3 years of repeated failure. And so things went not well. I handled repeated failure in the way that most people do. I ate too much, I drank too much, I stayed up too late watching bullshit on the TV, and so I went nowhere, and I became less and less interested and less attractive. Nowadays we'd call that depressed, but back then we didn't have those words. And a friend said, "Go and do this course." And I said, "Why would I do that?" He said, "Well, you'll stop smoking." And I thought, well, I could save money, because the money that I don't spend on the cigarettes would pay for the program. Back then, and we're talking the very early 80s, it was $500 to get into this program when my salary had been $4,000 for the year before tax. So,
Yeah.
you know, big investment.
Money. Yeah.
Big money. And so I decided, hang it, I'll go based on I might stop smoking. And of course, I did stop smoking, but I came across a material that I'm still passionately involved in today. And I said, I'm here we go. I recognize that I love being a teacher. I just didn't like being a teacher in a high school. And I prefer to teach adults. And so we started up, and away we went, and been teaching courses for the best part of 40 years.
Wow.
And that's kind of, you know, we began in Sydney, but it rapidly expanded and became nationwide. And, you know, I end up on the speaking circuit and all sorts of stuff. And, you know, hundreds of thousands of clients in many countries and all that sort of stuff. I don't like to say that because it sounds like, you know, we're a big deal. Whereas, you know, I still consider myself your average dude who's found out a few things about how life works. So let's just say I've got a lot of experience in helping people change their behavior. I like to call myself a behavior change specialist because people come along and say, can you help me stop smoking or lose weight or be more successful or get a better job or start a business or whatever? And we say, yeah, we can help you with that because we don't know much about that. What we do know is how to go inside and find the mechanism for you to personally change so that your relationships go better, so your business goes better, so that your parenting is better, so that everything you do is better, rather than here's a bunch of techniques for how to be a good parent, here's another different bunch of techniques for how to get the next job at work, and here's another bunch of techniques about how to build a business, and here's yet another bunch of, like, you know, you can buy books on all this stuff. And I've got, you know, I've got close to 1,000 books in my library on all of the things I just mentioned, and they're all great. But how do you carry that around in your head? And so we made the decision quite some time ago that we would focus on internal change and let that be the impetus for external change. Because if I can change who I am, then I change who I bring into my relationships, whether that's with my wife, my kids, my business, my clients, my whatever. If I, you know, simple things like if I can find more strength and compassion, well, that changes how I deal with everyone. You know, if I can find more resilience and courage, that changes how I tackle my problems in life. If I can find, you know, more integrity and more desire to do the right thing, change the world and make it a better place, well, that changes how I build my business. And, you know, so that's, we recommend, you know, that we can't help anybody who isn't willing to look within. Is really the summary of it. So there you go. That's from middle class Sydney upbringing to change the world.
That's powerful, very powerful. And like you spoke about, like you had a couple years of failures and it was just one after another. Like what were some of those things you did look at going into?
Well, the interesting thing is that school teachers, when they get out of school teaching, don't have any skills. So we can try anything. And so the thing that's easiest to fall into is sales of some kind or other. So I ended up standing in a retail store selling furniture, or actually just standing in a retail store trying to sell furniture because I couldn't. So, you know, there was 6 months of that. And then there was 6 months of trying to be a real estate agent. That didn't work. That was once again in the sales field. Then I went into installing kitchens, which was kind of a physical job that, you know, I was a lot better at that. I'm an ex-woodwork teacher. So when I was a teacher, I was pretty hands-on with kids. And so that was a saving grace. So I could install a kitchen and I could do a renovation. Those things were not so much failures, but they weren't really a business. They were individual jobs, you know. Someone wants a kitchen, that's good. But what about the next one?
It felt like work.
Well, it felt like work, and it also didn't feel like a business that had ongoing supply of, you know, customers. It was kind of like, okay, I finished that kitchen. Who wants a kitchen or a bathroom? Oh, I've got to go find that. Oh, I've got to put an ad. Spend a fortune on ads that don't work. Okay, what do we do now? Oh, so and so is painting their house, so I'll have a shot at that. And so it was kind of like falling my way forward all the time. Sometimes I made money And it was kind of, you would say the money was good for the job, but it was probably followed by 2 or 3 weeks where I was looking for the next job or the next opportunity or the next thing. So, I bounced from one thing to another because of what was popping up in front of me or because of what seemed like a good idea at the time.
Mm.
A lot of good ideas turn out to not be so good in practice. And so, at one point I was delivering newspapers, which meant sitting in the back of a ute while someone was driving down the road and I'm throwing newspapers into people's front yards. That's
Yeah.
great until your elbows go.
Mm.
It's kind of pretty cushy. I'm sitting in a big fat chair in the back of a ute, very illegal, having a heap of fun throwing newspapers. And then I got tennis elbow because I was throwing newspapers because they're heavy. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's kind of,
It's like, I think I'm finding it more as I'm getting older. It's like, if an opportunity comes up, it's like, I can go do that now, but at what cost? And do I really want to go do it? And it's sort of like, at what cost
yeah,
will that be? It's like, I can do it.
yes,
That's not the issue. It's just,
yes,
what does that mean? What else is going to come with that? That doesn't look like a
yeah.
perceived positive.
We're constantly saying to our clients, look, the truth is you can do anything, right? We live in an age where practically, your average punter, and I don't mean to call people average, but what I'm saying is practically everybody has taught themselves how to do a whole bunch of things like use a computer. And so we know that if we applied ourselves, we could do it. But the problem is we ask ourselves, can I do it? Instead of asking ourselves, should I do it?
Mm.
Because, I can do the accounting, I can do the tax returns. Should I? No, because A, I would do a shit job, but B, if I pay the accountant, I can be off finding more customers for my business or building the strength of my business by recruiting some more help, hiring someone who can be a writer or make PowerPoints or do something in the work field for us. It means there's less work for me and I can work on the business instead of in the business. And I think that human beings need to work on themselves instead of within themselves. And so what we do for a job, call yourself a school teacher, a nurse, a doctor, a lawyer, call yourself whatever, that takes 40 to 50 hours a week and we don't have time for ourselves. So many human beings are like a business owner. They don't understand that you have to work on it, not in it. Because when you're in it, you're busy. You're too busy to actually be effective. You're just getting shit done.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
kind of like, I've got to make the bed. Yeah, that's
Yes.
good, but it's going to be messed up again tomorrow morning. So,
Yeah.
and then, I spent a bit of time business coaching. It's not a full-time activity for me, but, I love business and I love what I learn when I work with business owners because I think that they're the real pioneers in our world. And so quite often I'll be talking to a business owner and I'll say, you haven't got these things done. They're pretty essential. And I might be sitting in their kitchen or whatever, and they'll say, yeah, I haven't had time. And I go, what have you been doing? And one client said to me, I can't think until I've got all the washing up done. I said, okay, if you can't think because, and what she meant was the washing up and the making of the beds and the cleaning up and, get the kids off to school and the usual stuff you would look at it and go, well, of course you've got to do all that. So, but listen, mate, if you can't think because of that, then that's time not spent on your business. And the consequences of that is that you can say, all right, I can't think until I get that stuff done. I'm saying, all right, well, you can't think because you need to be thinking about the business because it needs you to have the positive input into it. So, we ended up saying to her, look, you don't need to do this, except that you do. And that is get up, do all that stuff, get the kids off to school and get dressed and grab a briefcase and go to work. And so she went to work. Her work was actually the local library, which is pretty cool. It's quiet, no one's there, they don't talk to you, and your phone doesn't work or doesn't ring. And so she was getting a heap of work done just by going to the local library. Because of
Yeah.
that, get up, get dressed, get your brain in shape, and become more effective. So I wasn't telling her how to be a different person. I was saying, this is how you get the most out of yourself. It's a simple technique that most people don't recognize because you go, why would I bother with all that? That's going to be time consuming to get dressed, put makeup on, get in the car, drive to the local library so that I can work when I've got a fully fledged office just around the corner from my kitchen. I go, yeah, the trouble is you keep coming out and going in the kitchen. That's the issue. So
And the
behavior
distractions.
change. It's a distraction. And what I mean by behavior change specialist is how do we change the habits that determine our future? Because, like most of us know what we need to do. It's rare that I come across somebody who says, oh, do I have to go to the gym? Mostly I come across people who go, I know I need to go to the gym, I just ain't got time, or I just don't get there, or I go for the first 6 weeks and then somehow or other I forgot, or I can keep the chocolate in the pantry for 6 weeks, but if I open it to have one square of chocolate, I'll sit there and I'll eat the whole block of chocolate. So I think we know there's a lot of experience about I know what to do, I just don't know how to make myself do it. And that's what we mean about behavior change specialists. It's kind of fine that you know that you could if you wanted to, but that's not really good enough nowadays. We don't have the time to waste. It's kind of this client I'm talking to about who couldn't get to work because she's worried about the dishes. I said, just leave the dishes and do them when you get home. In fact, your children are old enough, train them to do the dishes because they need to grow up and be responsible, and they should know how to feed the washing machine as well. These are young people who need to be capable of when they grow up. So start now. I bless my mother for saying to me when I was 8 years old, and I think this is one of the formative experiences in life. I was 8 years old and she said, I'm going off to be the Cub Master, right? I'm going to run the Cub Scouts group on Tuesday afternoons. And it's your job to cook dinner for the family and get it on the table at 6 o'clock and don't be 1 minute late. And she gave me one lesson, and it was how to cook chops and 3 veg, mashed potatoes, peas, and I forget what the other one was. It was not the most complicated.
How old were you?
8.
Yeah.
I was 8 years old, and like really any 8-year-old can whack a bunch of chops under a griller. This is not rocket science. But what she taught me was that, I could be responsible and I could get something done on time, on schedule, to expectations. I'm saying the food was not great, but it was better than waiting for mum to get home and start cooking and whatever. And by that simple action, she taught me that, if you want something, you can make it happen. My mum was a working mum at a time when mothers were not. That was not common. She was the only working mum in the suburb that I was brought up in. She was busy. She had 4 kids in 6 years. So what that meant was us kids had to do stuff because otherwise it didn't get done. And it wasn't a question of do you want to, it was just you're doing this, you're doing the other, blah, blah, blah. My brother mowed the lawns and I cooked and et cetera. And every now and then it gets swapped around. And because we were a 2-income family at a time when that was unusual, we had a ski boat. My mum and dad saved up for a long time. We had a ski boat and I learned to water ski. And that's great. But I pissed and moaned and whinged about where's my sailing boat. And so, because that's the job of a kid, right? To whinge and moan. Yeah. And so I was doing a good job of that. And so my dad, similar to my mum, he said, okay, well, we'll build one in the garage. And so we built a sailing boat in the garage and I got to sail that along with my brother. And but the way my dad did it, and they must have planned this out, but I didn't notice. I thought I built the sailing boat and he helped. Now, obviously, in hindsight, I would have had no idea what I was doing, and I was probably carrying pots of glue and passing the hammer, and but I thought I built the sailing boat and he helped. And what that meant was that by the time I hit my early teenage years, it was firmly established within me that if you want something, you've probably got to go and make it happen. And that didn't mean that I was a genius. And there was, as I said, this is well before I became a school teacher, fell out of that and fell into a series of failures. But I think somewhere deep down inside, there was a message that, there's no one coming to save me. There's no knight in white shining armor riding over the hill to save us. But you can be the equivalent for yourself. You can, if you decide to take responsibility for yourself and not blame the circumstances or the world or, the partner or the upbringing or the education or the whatever, how much you get paid in that shitty job. If you're prepared to not blame that, then what happens is that you're 100% responsible for your shitty results. But what that means is if you're responsible for them, you can do something about it. Whereas if someone else is responsible for your shitty results, you just got to wait for the world to change. And so, you know, if you believe in luck, I think, oh, you're just going to have to wait for the wind to change direction, mate. Get happy where you are, because you're not going to move. So,
and yeah. And so, like, sorry, you go.
We say, if you can successfully blame, say you can say to your partner, you made me angry, right? It's your fault that I'm angry. That's brilliant that you can do that. Maybe you got to put up an argument to establish that, you know, maybe you got to be pretty tricky in an argument, but you successfully blame them for how you feel. Well, in our way of looking at the world, that means you're a victim. And victims don't get what they want. Victims get victimized. So that's just great that you can blame someone else for how you feel or the circumstances that you're in. But what it means is you're stuck. And so that's the first place we start is, are you prepared to take responsibility for where you're at the moment? Because if you're not, then we probably can't help you. But if you are, well, we can say, okay, here are some things you can do that are going to change you internally. And when you change on the inside, then the outside will be a reflection of that.
Yeah. Powerful.
Hope that makes sense.
Yeah. And I guess on that, like, I guess if someone's listening, like they more and they've gone through, you know, like the last 2 years with the lockdowns, might have lost their job. Now they may have a mortgage and dealing with the interest rates and how I'm gonna, you know, they're living day by day, week to week, and all the walls are closing in on them, and that just like feels like failure to failure. Like what would you say if you're in their position? What would be the first move to get out of that state?
Well, I think first of all, we have to understand what that state produces. So the lockdowns were probably one of the worst things that ever happened to us, not because of the political implications or the whatever, but because human beings don't do well on their own. So as a crowd animal, as a herd mentality, what we need for well-being is contact with others. So if you study people who live to be 100 or above, they all have strong networks of close relationships. And so personal well-being doesn't really have to do with anything much more than how connected to your community or your tribe or your family you feel. So what lockdowns do is that they shut all of that down. You can't even go and visit your family. The trouble is, isolation is very attractive. And so we can whinge about it and say, I don't like it. But what it does is it allows us to sit in front of the TV eating chocolate and behaving badly. And so whilst isolation is a killer, it's actually like, you know, the scientists who measure this stuff, the people who do research in what are the effects of various long-term emotions, you know, what is the effect of being chronically ill for 2 to 3 years or in pain for a long period of time, people who study that kind of thing say that the worst thing that can happen to a human being is isolation. So, and yet we're all attracted to it because it means I can spend a lot of time on Facebook and I don't have to justify it to anybody. And so isolation has a weird kind of attraction in terms of it promotes procrastination. Procrastination promotes depression because when I'm doing nothing, there's nothing to feel good about, right? I can't feel good about I got the washing up done and the bed's made and the floor vacuumed and, you know, I reached out and started a business or whatever. A lot of people used isolation to go, okay, this is now when I put a lot of energy into my side hustle. A lot of people said, okay, I'm going to get a home gym and go harder. And, you know, but that boils down to no more than 10% of the population. Those are the people who could make the internal shift. And what I mean by that is that the solution to this, when you say, okay, how do we get out of the walls closing in? The solution is what we call reframing, which is, once again, it's an internal concept, right? It's not about reframing your house and your windows and painting the house. It's about going, okay, this looks disastrous. When I look at the circumstances as you just described them, that is one way of viewing it. Another equally valid way of viewing it, which is just as true, is to say, how privileged am I? I've got the opportunity to do what I want. Half the world don't have a house. 10% of the world's population live in a war zone, and they're dodging bullets. They're hungry, they have no shelter, no safety, and nowhere to go, and no one's coming to save them either. And so reframing is to look at the circumstances and come up with a different solution. And I'd say reframing in the lockdown environment and the massive change environment that we're going through is, you won't be able to do anything with that until you frame it into, here is the biggest opportunity I've ever seen. And once you determine that, and people had to do this when the steam train turned up. They looked at that, and most people said those things go so fast, you'll be ripped out of your body, and the atoms in your body will separate. So, talk about resistance. And so, and yet we look at steam trains and go, well, they're a bit slow and a bit ancient, right? Because now we're looking at, jump in your car, go where you like.
Mm.
When we say jump in your car and go where you like, that's because we live in a free country. I think that's another thing we need to, we forget to acknowledge that there are not, the army's not standing on every street corner with machine guns telling us where we can go and where we can't. So the very fact you wake up in the morning and you're still breathing, that's a blessing, right? That's kind of like, at my age, when I wake up in the morning, I go in the bathroom and I breathe on the mirror. And if it fogs up, I go, this is going to be a great day, because a lot of people didn't wake up, they passed away in their sleep. And, I've just recently lost both my parents in the last 5 years. And it's kind of made me super aware that life is fragile and that we're here for a very short period of time, that the planet's been here for billions of years, and my time on it is like, if you were drawing a line from left to right, my time on it is about as thick as a cigarette paper. So I need to maximize that, maximize the benefit, maximize what I can do with that. But I can't do that if I don't change what I think, what I feel, and what I do. And so our approach to personal development is probably different to everybody else's. Is we go, what in our experience is 25% of people get stuck because their thinking is a bit screwy. Their thinking is a bit strange. It's kind of just been taught to think in a incorrect way. But that's only 25% of the people that I see who are stuck. Another 25% of those people who are stuck are people who can't do something because there's some kind of fear they haven't dealt with or been able to wrap their brain around. So they can't speak in public, they can't stand on the edge of a cliff, they can't apply for the next job, they can't tell somebody, don't speak to me that way, they feel unworthy and like they don't deserve success and whatever. So that's an emotional blockage. I think 25% of the people that I see fit into that category. In other words, their thinking is fine, but their feeling says you just can't do that, which blocks them. But 50% of the population fit in the category of, I know what to do and I'm actually capable of doing it, I just can't make myself do it. And the illustration of that is knowing that you need to go to the gym but not getting there, knowing that you need to change your diet but never arriving really at the target weight. The whole, oh yeah, I'm across it all, I know it. We say knowledge is kind of like not much use. You can know a lot of stuff. Like I said, I've got 1,000 books on the shelves. I know a lot of stuff, but how much do I use? How much of it translates into my day-to-day activity? Because the results I produce in my day have got more to do with what I do than what I'm thinking and feeling while I'm doing it. And so if I have a go at something and I'm thinking and feeling that I'm an imposter and I've never been successful at this, and what makes me think that I could do this, but I'm having a go at it, well, maybe customers are buying my product and I'm actually succeeding. So it's very possible to succeed whilst feeling like you're a failure and you're not getting anywhere. And in fact, my own personal experience is that somebody said to me, hey, we've got a crowd of 200 people. Can you go talk to them? I thought, I really panicked. I had never been in front of a crowd at that point. I was entitled to feel panicky about whatever. And I declined the opportunity. I said, no, I'm not ready. Let so-and-so do it. And I'm the understudy. And that went on for a long time. And I realized I was kind of stuck. I was the understudy, but I was never going to be ready because I was waiting to feel confident. And confidence was not turning up. Anyway, one day the head guy rang me and said, I'm in the toilet throwing up. You're going to have to give the talk. And that was minutes before the talk started. And the
Wow.
crowd of 200 was in the room ready to rock and roll. And they go, you're it. And I go, I haven't even got time to get changed. So, you know, my very first public big deal in front of 200 people, mate, I was wearing tracksuit pants and, you know, a t-shirt. I was supposed to go on in a suit and tie. and I said, you know, so-and-so's crook, so I'm going to tell you what he was going to say. And I got his PowerPoint and I said, Fred would now say blah, 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 blah. And then he would go on to this. And I kind of did the whole thing in terms of, I'm not giving you the talk, I'm telling you what he would say. Anyway, the thing went off, and because the talk itself was good. So I was petrified, but I was giving a talk that someone else had designed and was practiced at. And I was supposed to be good at it, but I hadn't had any whatever. And so the talk worked a treat. And, you know, of course, they said, we want you back and you're on the circuit now. And, you know, I spent many years, like, you know, we're talking a decade on the speaking circuit, talking to 500 people every weekend.
Yeah, well,
about what we do.
that's how I found you. I think that was 2013. I think and I wasn't looking for you. I wasn't looking for your services. I was there. I didn't know. I was just at that point in time. It was my wife's mother went to the event a couple of years earlier, and she said, "Oh, mate," she could see how frustrated I was in the work I was doing, which was the commercial, industrial, real estate at the time. And she said, "Just go down to the event and just see what you think and see what comes from it." So I just came with an open mind and took my wife, and we both went, and then we saw you on stage there, and yeah, the rest is history now.
It's an interesting thing, you know. It's you know, in those days I was known as a mindset guy. Now I'd rather be known as the behavior change specialist, but it was kind of like called mindset because of about how you think. And they used to put me on at the very end. So all the other speakers would go on and they'd be spruiking something. You know, you can be a property developer or a renovator, or you can trade stocks and shares, or you can do this. It was all kind of like opportunity orientated, and all those people would get up and talk and then sell their product, which was how to do what it was that they were talking about. And they'd put me on the end and they'd say, all of that's fine, but unless you have the right mindset, you can't make any of that work. Well, that was just an invitation to kind of go along and say, okay, this guy's got the key. And away we went. And that worked really well. And I think that's because our culture has moved. In the 40 years that I've been teaching people about how to be a better version of themselves, there's been a massive movement from show me how to get the things I want, like a house, a car, and a boat, and into show me how to be the person I respect and admire and look up to. You know, show me how to live successfully. Show me, you know, when I first started, if I said, you know, this is actually what we're talking about is actually a spiritual concept. It's about your inner self and finding inner peace and happiness and peace and love and joy and radiating that out. If I'd said that in the first 5 years I was teaching, I would have emptied the room. Yeah. Nowadays, if I don't say that in the first 10 minutes, then that would empty the room.
In other words, amazing, yeah.
It's a massive shift from give me, I want, to I need to become. Yeah. I want to be, you know, people nowadays, they haven't let go of, I want to be successful. And I think that's very healthy. I think, you know, part of this, what I call reframing, is to recognize you've got one life, but you've got it. You are one of the very few people on the planet who has the opportunity to do what you want and make what you want of your life. And we need to grab that opportunity and run with it. We just need to understand that that opportunity is not only rare, but it takes specialist skills, because to become who you want means going within, not learning how to be a doctor or a lawyer or whatever. You know, no matter what profession you look at, you'll find a spread of people from the unhappy ones to the happy ones and everyone in between, because it's not the depression. Sorry, not the depression, not the profession that makes people happy. You know, some people, as I was a school teacher, and There were some school teachers who were, ecstatically happy being teachers, and they found their groove. They were doing what they did to do. They knew they were contributing to the future. They were educating young minds. They just loved it. At the other end of the scale were people who hated being locked up in rooms for 40 minutes at a time and being told what to do and how to do it. And there's everybody in between. And so, for whatever reasons, I found that teaching wasn't going to do it for me. I knew, by example, I didn't want to become like those bitter and twisted people who were locked up in a profession where the golden handcuffs are on and they stayed there because they had a mortgage. I wanted to be the one who go, okay, let's do something about this. And that means I can't see this working for me long term. There's never going to be a time when this works. So do I jump now or do I jump in 10 years when the golden handcuffs have got a bigger grip on me? And I saw in front of me many 60-year-old teachers who are bitter and twisted and angry about a wasted life. And I thought, thank you for demonstrating that to me by your existence. They weren't going around giving that as lessons, right?
No.
I just saw these grey faces, these depressed looking people. I thought, I've got to get out of here. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know where so it's one of the things that people get frightened of is they go, yeah, I know that this is no good. I need to do something different, but I haven't found out what it is yet. So I'm just going to stay here and keep paying the mortgage. And I go, yeah, I think I need, I think that's fraught with danger because life gets in the way and we get some more expenses and there's more reason to stay stuck there. And then, for example, another child turns up, wasn't really planned or expected. We go, okay, now I need the job even more. So when we stay there, we get more and more reasons to stay there. And I think, we are safer when we jump. Of course, you can't know everything about what you're jumping into. Even if you knew what it was you were jumping into, you still got to learn it. You still got to, it might look fantastic. You might get there and hate it. So many people are afraid of change when I think what we need to do is get comfortable with change because it's happening anyway. We are surrounded by more change than's ever happened to human beings when in history was there more change than what's going on around us at the moment. So I think we can legitimately say your usefulness in the future is directly related to your capacity to change.
Yeah, definitely.
That's not a new thing, like there's no wooden boat builders anymore because we found ways to make boats out of fiberglass and metal and all sorts of other things. So many professions have moved on. There's no stenographers anymore. There's no girls with a pad and pen writing down what some dude says and typing it up because the dude can just talk straight to the computer and it converts text to speech to text and off it goes. So many careers have gone by the wayside. We tend to whinge and moan about that at the time, but then get used to it. And I'm suggesting that's probably good enough for what's gone on in the past. But now that change is accelerating, we've got to handle a lot more, a lot quickly. We need to be proactive when it comes to change because it sure is happening, mate.
At a faster and faster pace.
Yes, exponential.
And so, say someone's listening to this and they're like, all right, I want to burn the boats and burn the bridges and quit my job and I've got a mortgage and kids and car loans and all this. What would be the safest way, lowest risk way if they are thinking about it and they've got a partner so they don't both burn the bridges and then both do a bit of a version I did a few years ago and it actually went sideways and I had to go back and go get a job and go down that route.
Well, I'm not sure that what you're describing is actually a bad thing because when you go sideways, go back, get a job, get some more money, you're actually still in the learning process and learning what you need to learn to be able to make a more full-time jump. So I would say that the riskiest thing is to not have a plan. So whatever your plan is, whether that's burn the bridges and jump or whether it's actually save up a bit of money so that you've got some kind of safety net, or whether you take out a loan, or whether you sell the house and get the cash and use that or whatever, all of those are plans that people kind of, you'll find someone to bag every one of those plans. But the plan that's got the best chance of working is the one that you come up with. And you and your partner get together and talk about what you're capable of and what you think you can handle, and then go and enact a plan, understanding that any plan is going to meet resistance, right? Having a plan doesn't mean it's going to work. General MacArthur said, rarely do plans survive contact with the enemy, because the enemy's got their idea of what's going to happen as well. So adaptability and changing on the fly is actually the key skill there. The plan will get torn to shreds because of wanting to enact it. We say that when you set a goal for yourself, when you start to take action towards a goal, you are automatically creating or inviting difficulty and challenges. Because if you're just going to sit there and do nothing, it's pretty easy. It's when you're out there trying to build something from scratch, or to get something that's not working and turn it into something that is working, then you're inviting challenge, you're inviting difficulty. You're saying, okay, come to me and we'll grapple with you. And it's like wrestling an alligator. There's no sign you're going to win until the alligator's submitted, right? So, business and marriage and parenting is like that. Like, when is it ever over? When do you actually declare that you've won? Because it's kind of like, no, we're just sort of learning as we go and getting better at it, regretting our mistakes, but understanding you can't go back and change it. So the worst thing to do is to not formulate the plan. So when, in answer to your question, the kiss of death is, look, now's not the right time. We've got to get through this bit. We've got a child who's sick, or we've got, my mum is getting old and we're sucking up a lot of time looking after her, or we just got to get a bit more paid off the house, or we've got to get over there's a big project at work and it's sucking up a lot of time. And when I hear people say now's not the right time, I go, what you don't realize is it's never going to be that, because when is the right time to start a business? When is the right time to get married? When is the right time to have kids? There's no such answer. There's just, you do it whenever you can, or whatever, and circumstances sometimes dictate that. Mary and I were married for 12 years before we had a pregnancy that stuck. And so we had lots of pregnancies that didn't work. So a lot of that's kind of like, you just deal with what you got. So we became parents later in life. I was 36 when our first child was born. So was Mary, 36 years old. That was, at the time, that was a bit older than the average. That doesn't mean we weren't trying. That doesn't mean we hadn't planned it for 10 years before that. So you need the goal, and you need the plan, and you need the whatever, but understand the goal might shift and the plan might have to change depending on what develops under those circumstances. That's why I say adaptability and changeability is actually your highest level skill, because if you can do something now and you're really good at it, that's great, but it's probably going to become redundant. Therefore, when we hire people now, I don't hire people for the skills they have. I hire them based on how many things they've changed from. And if they've got a litany of jobs and they're all vastly different and they went from one thing to another, I'm probably going to hire that person, because at least they know how to change from one thing to another and adapt and learn and change what it is that they're delivering as a consequence of the needs that they see or are perceived. Someone with a university degree, I wouldn't hire them for the knowledge they have, because most university degrees have got a half-life of their own training period. So, my physiotherapist says that he's doing a 6-year course, and they've told him already that by the time he finishes, half of what he's learnt will be redundant. That's before he gets into practice. So his usefulness as a physiotherapist is going to be not what he learnt at university, but what he will continue to learn on the job and from further training as he goes on. And I think that's true for everyone. So what that means is we need to embrace the concept that my number one skill is not what I learnt at university or college or whatever. That's going to become redundant. But what I can learn, and predominantly teach myself, because the institutions that are traditional learning places taking too long. So if you look at artificial intelligence, I've been studying that for as long as it's been around, because I'm fascinated by the whole idea that a machine could do something for me. And I've learnt most of that from YouTube.
Mm.
I'm bothered to go to, like the TAFEs and the universities and the schools, they haven't got the courses together yet. When they do, they'll be based on material that has changed. Because, you know, last week, there were over 100 separate pieces of artificial intelligence released onto the market, most of them free to use. Right now, 100 pieces of artificial intelligence, you know, something that can analyze a YouTube video that you made, pull out the key 1 minute, turn it into a reel, and show you, make it so you can stick it up on Facebook, and you can just sit there and have a cup of coffee watching it do it. In fact, you won't get the cup of coffee drunk because it does it so fast.
Mm.
But how long does it take to understand A, that's around, B, what you could use it for, and C, figure out where it fits in your plans? You've actually got to go for a walk on the beach, do some thinking. So we're big fans of deep thinking. But deep thinking, that means you've got to carve the time out for it. We need space in our brain to do that. So carve the space out for that. People who are busy already, they don't get to do that. How do you track 100 pieces of useful stuff per week? Well, you don't if you don't have the time. You know, I've been chewing up enormous number of hours watching YouTube videos on this kind of AI or that kind of AI, you know, text to speech or speech to text, or how to clone your voice, you know, how to get ChatGPT to write you an essay and then get an avatar to say it for you and then plug it all up and all that sort of stuff. You know, it's kind of like phenomenal stuff. It's in its infancy. It's going to get a whole lot better, but we have to stay up to speed with that. That takes time.
Yeah.
So we need to be able to build a life that has this time in it for us to stay up to speed. That means, and this is why I'm a fan of big income, you know, we need to be producing higher levels of income than we need to spend so that we can buy time. And the way we buy time is we buy help. So we get someone to come and clean our house, because that's time where we could be learning how to make millions. So whether it's someone to clean our house, do our pool, paint the house, you know, a lot of people are into renovating, and I go, I'm not sure renovating is a good idea. Why don't you pay the builder to do that, and you go figure out how to make money? So, you know, that's just a personal bias. It's nevertheless kind of probably a root cause. So that we are experiencing fundamental change in how we approach things, because we're educated in the kind of Christian work ethic, which says a good person works hard. And if you're not honest and working hard and letting the money take care of itself, there's something wrong with you. The trouble is, if you're honest and you're working hard and you're letting the money take care of itself, it's going up in smoke. So we work hard, we're honest, we get the end of the week or the month or the year and go, where's the money? Oh,
on the rat wheel.
Yep. Yes, the rat wheel.
Yeah. And I guess like a lot of people that might be listening, they might think, oh, I just need to get in shape and that'll change the rest of my life. Do you think like it's not just one thing, it's a combination? There's more than, you've got all these other areas to make that significant change in your reality and your life. But that's a start.
I think what we've been educated in is if I get in shape, I'll be happy, which is very similar to when I get a push bike, I'll be happy, which that morphs into when I pay the mortgage off, I'll be happy. That's externalizing. It's this thing I've been saying all along about going within. When you get in shape, you can still be depressed. It's just that you're skinny, right? Your body's a different shape and it's still depressed. You can pay your house off. That doesn't mean you'll be happy. It just means that you'll be the same level of happiness, but now the bank stops bothering you. So, you know, people say, oh, it'll take away all my worries. I go, no, you just worry about something else. So, you know, you worry about whether, you know, there's going to be a world war, or whether inflation is going to keep going up, or have I got enough in my savings and investment strategy to eventually be retired? There's plenty to worry about, mate. So it's kind of one of those things where we say, I'll be happy when. And the reality is, no, you won't. if you imagine the push bike, if this can relate to your listeners, I had the experience as a child of saying, I'll be happy when I get a push bike, because my parents were very much against me having a push bike because they thought I'd be killed on the roads. Now, I'm talking to you as a 71-year-old, and if you can imagine the amount of traffic that was around when I was 14, the roads were one of the safest places on the planet, right? But my parents were petrified I was going to get killed. So they were against me having a push bike. And so probably that whole thing about they don't want me to have one made me want one more. So that amped up probably, I don't remember, but it amped up the whole idea about I'll be happy when I got a push bike. And my response to that is I've been through that experience and I was not happier with a push bike. I was for a while because it embodied freedom and I could get around and, all of that sort of stuff. But after a while, push bikes are just as hard as walking. And so you get just as tired and, all the things that go wrong and you fall off and usual things happen. No big deal, but, they happen. And so what I realized was that the person who says I'll be happy when I get a push bike has mistaken the push bike for the source of happiness. And I say, no, you won't be happy. You'll be mobile. And if you're miserable, a push bike enables you to spread the misery into more suburbs. You'll affect more people with your misery.
Yeah.
You'd be better off without the push bike because your misery would be contained within your house. So the push bike is kind of like the external that is supposed. We say nothing on the outside will ever change anything on the inside. But what's on the inside is going to change everything that's on the outside. Don't know if I answered the question. Not even sure what the question was now.
Yeah, no, I get that. Yeah, definitely. And with like a few years ago, you had I guess on this topic, like a health issue with the big letter C. You had cancer.
Yep.
How did you, with all the knowledge that you had in the personal development field, like, was there any one thing that sort of helped navigate that journey through it and on the other side of it?
Yeah, and I think I had the same experience that we have with everything that goes wrong. Now, the word wrong, if you listen to cancer survivors, you'll hear a lot of them saying the gift of cancer, which means we reframed it and made it right. But the experience for me, well, I think was very similar to a lot of people, and that is, well, what have I done wrong? So here's this thing that turns up that you can't see, that you don't know was happening inside of you. And I haven't robbed banks and been nasty to people. So what have I done wrong that this should happen to me? That's kind of a very common normal reaction. Is it's sort of like, holy moly, I thought that happened to other people. And so I especially had that because by that time I'd been working in the personal development field for 20 years because the cancer was actually in 2003. So, I'm just celebrating the 20th anniversary of getting through that. Feels like yesterday, but it's actually 20 years ago.
Wow.
And so when I cast my mind back to it, the first thing was to fall in a heap and go, why me? And this is awful and I can't do anything about it, etc. And throw myself into the hands of the professionals. And so the doctor said, you need an operation. In hindsight, I think that operation was not the smartest move, but I went and had what's called a radical prostatectomy because I had aggressive prostate cancer. So they removed the prostate gland. It's a relatively common thing nowadays, but it's a 6-hour operation, big deal, big slice down my stomach, a week in hospital, all that. Nowadays, they actually do that operation with keyhole surgery, and they do it in day surgery, and you turn up and you take a number, and they go in and they do it with a robot, and you walk home. So it's a little bit different now. And actually, walking home is part of the recovery. But I then went into a pretty deep, difficult period where they did the operation. We had no health insurance at the time, so it cost 30 grand. So, there's a bit of a hit on several levels. And they, at the end of the operation, then they said, well, we've done everything we can, now it's up to you. And I said, this was supposed to cure it. And they go, oh, no, we've just done the best we can, up to you. Come back in 6 weeks, we'll give you a blood test and that'll tell us whether you live or die. They didn't say those words, but that was my interpretation of it. And so during that 6 weeks, you can imagine that was a long period of time, that 6 weeks waiting to get my sentence, so to speak. And my wife, Mary, came to me and she said, listen, honey, we love you to bits. We can't tell you how much we love you. This is her and our 2 daughters. But you're a nightmare, mate. Could you just go do some of that shit that you teach other people? Because you're nearly impossible to live with. And in hindsight, I can say I was impossible to live with. So she said, could you go and do some of that stuff you teach everybody else? Because I actually did have a bit of a track record of working with people who were terminally ill. And a lot of work in that field, which was more of a shock to me, or it added to the shock. Anyway, I realised I needed to go within and actually face my demons. And so we lived in the country. We had 250 acres. I grabbed the dog and went for a walk and started a fire and boiled the billy and talked to the dog. And I think a dog is a good person to talk to when you've got to have a deep and meaningful. And so I had about 100 cups of tea and realised I needed to just actually deal with the facts. And so I had a pen and paper. I drew a line down the middle and I said to myself, what are you going to do if they say you've got 3 years? Because that was the estimate they had at the time. If they say in 3 years you're out, what are you going to do? And I came to the conclusion that I would meditate as much as I can to develop inner strength to deal with what was probably going to be pretty ugly. I also came to the conclusion as number 2 that I'd go to the gym as much as I could, and I'd focus on weights in particular to build physical strength so that I could fight the good fight, or have a lot of, be in best condition for fighting. And the other logical and probably number 1 was spend as much time with Mary and the girls as I possibly could, because there's a limited time. And the caveat on that, the proviso on that was, if I'm only going to live, and my daughters were teenagers at the time, what do I want their memories of me to be like? And what I wanted was for my daughters to have that last 3 years of me being cheerful, bright, happy, appreciating life, creating fun, and we all laugh a lot. And I realised that meant that I would have to create fun adventures and excitement. We're not overly wealthy, so that's not a matter of buying ourselves trips away. It's kind of like, how do we have fun at home? And so I came to that conclusion. I can't tell you the relief that I got when I saw the plan, when I saw, okay, meditate like crazy, go to the gym as much as you can, spend time with the kids and have fun. I thought, I can do that. That might be difficult, but I can fit it in. And so I was enormously relieved that I knew what to do. In essence, I guess what I'm saying is that there was the plan that we mentioned a little while back. Any plan is better than no plan. And I'd actually been tormented by the unknowing, the not knowing. And there's a plan. It may not have been a good plan according to other people, but it was my plan. And I felt like I could work with it. So that brought a great deal of inner peace. I actually came to terms with dying at that point in that conversation with the dog. And so I thought, geez, that's a 50-50 chance that that's how it's going to be. But the other side of the page is blank. What am I going to do if I live? What am I going to do if they say you're clean, you've got no cancer? And of course, what came up was meditate, go to the gym, make your life fun and exciting. And I thought, shit, could have come to this conclusion when I was 20, 30, 40. In other words, that it's not just I could have come to that conclusion 6 weeks ago when I had the operation. I could have come to that conclusion in my 20s when I left teaching, or when I was in my depression. I could have come to that conclusion anytime. And that's why I say the value of a plan is not the plan itself, because it might be a crap plan. The value of a plan is the fact that it exists, because when the plan stops work or doesn't work, you can adjust it. But if you've got nothing to adjust, you're empty-handed. So that was me coming to terms. So I'm not afraid of dying. What I am afraid of is not living fully. And so that's why I work. So, the theory is you retire at 65, and I suppose we could do that. I haven't looked at our finances closely enough to know whether that's possible or not,
Yeah.
because I don't care, because what I want to do is what I do. Like I said, to me, there's so much possibility in today and the next day and the next day that I want to be around for it. So I think I study longevity, and I have modified my exercise and diet routines to reflect that, So I turn the shower on cold for a minute at the end of my shower in the morning, and I eat less red meat, and I eat more veggies, and I go to the gym more often, and I do shit that is supposed to make me live to be 100, because I think, well, I'm on the planet for possibly another 30 seconds or another 30 years. I think it's anything between 30 seconds and 30 years.
Yeah.
I could get hit by a bus tomorrow, so maybe I should be into the chocolate and the beer, but I don't think so. So, I've kind of, fortunately, this is why I call it the gift of cancer. 20 years ago, I realised my life is what I make it, not what happens to me. And so I've been full head on into that. I consider I'm very lucky because of the cancer, because it's like I died. It's like you got a second chance. So every day it's like second chance. What are you going to do with it? Mary did say that to me one time. She, when we got through all of this, and I said to her, I'm ready to go back to work, because I just kind of stopped working. I said, I'm ready to go back to work. She said, what are you going to do different? And that was probably one of the most important questions I've ever had to answer, because I could just go and do it all the same. And I think many people
go back to how you used to do it, but you decided to make a change and go on a different path in your day to day.
Yeah. And not be afraid of what could go wrong, understanding that a lot of things that go wrong actually turn out to be right. I tell this story about saying to my father, how will I know who to marry? And he says, you'll just know. And I thought, oh, bullshit, I wanted some help, mate. Anyway, that happened, and I just knew. And I want to ask, will you marry me? But the problem is that could be yes or no, right? And I'm scared of the no. So how do you make the no not happen? Don't ask, right? Because if you don't ask, you can't get knocked back. 18 months later, I'm thinking, this is not working. So I say, will you marry me? She says, no. I go, why? And she goes, I don't love you. Well, I do, but I love you like a brother, and you shouldn't marry someone that you only love like a brother. You need to be passionately involved, and blah, blah, blah. And by the way, I'm pregnant to somebody else. This is someone living in the same house as me. And so that was, you could say, is that a good day or a bad day? And I ask this of my crowds all the time, is that a good day or a bad day? And everybody goes, that's the shittest day I've ever heard of. I go, yeah, until I met my wife, Mary, who I've now been married to for 47 years. And that first girl who said no was actually the best thing that ever happened. So we talk about good day and bad day, but how would you know? You might need 5 years to figure it out. When I got the cancer, that's the worst thing that ever happened, until it made me realise I could live my life the way I wanted, if only I paid attention and decided what that looked like. So was that good or bad? Well, for me, it was good. Had I lost my life, maybe you'd say it was bad. So, there's an element of we can't predict in there. But there is definitely, the only thing we've got to work with is what we bring to what we've got, and how we decide we're going to change what's in front of us. And maybe what's in front of us suits us, and that's great. If it doesn't, then it's up to us. I love that expression. If it's going to be, it's up to me.
Yeah, that's powerful. Very powerful. Yeah.
And fun to work with. I love working with this concept, because I think the whole thing's funny. I think the whole idea that we could be who we want to be, but we're just too scared, I think that's hilarious. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Very interesting.
Maybe I'm warped.
And so, like, on your day to day, you do the cold showers, and are you doing any of the breath work?
Yeah. A big believer in breath work. Wim Hof has popularized an expression that used to be a bit woo-woo. Breath work was kind of like, on the left-hand edge, and wow, what do you, how could that work, or whatever. I think breath work is a very powerful mechanism for personal change. It works on the principles we've been talking about, for the last hour or so, and that is go within. It's all within. It's not out there. So breath work is important. I've cut down the amount of food that I eat. So I practice intermittent fasting. So that means I'm somewhere between 1 and 2 meals a day, sort of. 4 or 5 years ago, I just skipped breakfast and I'll do the 18 and 6. So that's 18 hours of not eating and 6 when you do. So that means, food starts around lunchtime or 1 o'clock in the afternoon, thereabouts. But I'm drifting in the direction of skipping lunch as well. And I'm finding that that's working. I've got more energy. I'm able to be more present. I think better. My mind is clearer. I definitely go better in the gym. As a devout eater and drinker, I love eating and I love having a glass of red wine. I'm sort of drifting away from those things because, and it's not a plan, this is a case where I'm just letting it evolve by itself because who cares? I don't need to get somewhere with it. What I'm finding is as I experiment with my body, I'm finding what works, and I'm specifically working on what delivers more energy now, and that's less chocolate, less beer. I love a beer. Like a tap beer to me is kind of like, just about the pinnacle of experiences. It means you've got the time to go to the pub and sit in a beer garden and just do nothing. So it's more about what it is than the alcohol. But I love the taste, but I'm just drifting away from it because, it dulls me and I don't feel bright, and I love feeling bright and alive and full of energy and anticipation, and like I did when I was a kid. So, as a 71-year-old, I go hard in the gym. I lift weights that, had someone say to me the other day, so I don't know them. They come up to me, they said, "How old are you?" I said, "I'll tell you, but you have to guess." All right, so I'll tell you the number, but you have to guess first.
Yeah.
And this is just feeding my ego. And they go, somewhere between 50 and 55. I go, okay, you're right. And I left them at it. Later on, I said, I'm actually 71. The guy goes, "Oh, no, no." And it's true. I'm pushing heavier weights than when I was 50. And I'm doing that to stress the body because what I notice is that it's responding well. In other words, I'm stronger, I'm fitter, and that means I'm emotionally stronger, right? I don't do it because I want to look like Arnold. In fact, I don't look like Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'm stunned at the number of people who say to me, "I don't go to the gym because I don't want to muscle up." I go, "Shoot, man, if you put 10 years into it, you're still not going to muscle up like that."
Yeah.
So I go for what it does for me internally. Of course, pumping the weights produces endorphins and serotonin and dopamine and all the feel-good drugs, but they wear off. But what I feel is emotionally strong. I'm capable of handling trauma better. And of course, my clients turn up and quite often there's trauma. Quite often they're dealing with horrible things that have happened in their past. And I've got to be capable of being strong enough to not get drawn into my version of that. And we're all suffering. If I'm going to act as a guide, I've got to be able to not be drawn into and be a participant. So I handle long, harder days better than when I was 40 or 50. That's got a lot to do with these things. There are more things than we've mentioned. I've cut down red meat. I've obviously cut down the amount of food. I've gone in the direction of fresh, pure and natural. And if I didn't cook it or my wife didn't cook it, I'm not touching it, mate. If it comes out of a packet, forget it. So, and I grow what I can as well. Once again, that's time consuming. That means you've got to get other stuff organized. Spend time in the veggie patch, then that's time that's not somewhere else. So once again, these things have implications about time and being organized and pushing the envelope in terms of what you want. So I'm out of bed at 5 or 5:30 in the morning because I can be by myself until about 9. I organise my day so that there's no clients and no whatever. And the reason behind that is I need 3 to 4 hours by myself to get my shit together to be as good as I can be. And so I'm meditating and I'm reading and I'm, all of the things that lift my spirit happen while everyone else is asleep. It means I go to bed early because, there's no getting out of bed at 5 unless I'm in bed at 9 o'clock at latest. That's a discipline. It's kind of these things echo. It's kind of like I want to get up early. Okay, good. That probably means you've got to go to bed early. That means you've got to stop watching shit on the TV. It also means you've got to eat a bit earlier because you don't want to go to bed in a full stomach. So there are ramifications. Simple decisions create these echoes, but I reckon they're worth dealing with. So I end up loving my life. I literally live in the dream. We live on the water. We've got a little boat, and we get out in the boat, take their grandkids, play with them when they come and visit, and we're in that fortunate position where I'm able to act young enough that the grandkids want to hang out with us, so we take them to the pool and throw them from one person to the other. And fortunately, I'm strong enough to throw them, throwing a 6-year-old, probably not that difficult, but, I want to maintain the strength so I can keep it up for a while. So, I'm a big fan of fun activities that are not being done for any other reason except they're fun. I watch comedy, but not much other TV. Because maybe
you'll become one of those people that are triggered and reactive and angry if you watch the news.
Yeah.
With the stuff that's on there.
Yeah. It's
too
watching
much
the
of
news,
it, I should say. Yeah.
I like to keep up with what's going on, but I'd rather choose it for myself via YouTube or any of the other things that just feed it to you so I can take it or leave it. I've realised that I'm a sucker for being drawn into the YouTube vortex. So I'm kind of pretty strict about when I look at it and how I look at it. We also use it as a business tool. So, we do a lot of promotional work via social media. So I need to have a sense of it, but I'm wary that it's a double-edged sword and that, I can get drawn into that bottomless pit very easily. That means some discipline around that.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm okay with discipline. I'm old enough to feel like discipline is actually what gives me freedom. I used to think discipline was other people telling me what to do. Now I understand my habits give me freedom. We can go where we want. We can do what we want. We can feel how we want. We can talk to who we want. All of that's because of these disciplines. Getting those things in place means making them habitual. Building new habits is not the easiest thing. And that's really what we teach people, is how to build habits that are supportive so that you're permanently supported. If I can't teach people how to make it habitual, then that means they have to keep their mind on it all the time. That means they have to have a big sign in their house saying, go to the gym. By the time you put up all the signs you need, the house is full of signs.
Yeah. I found a good one for me, because I don't really like running, but I like the high after the running or while I'm running. It's just that part of putting the runners on and going is the part I don't really like. And so the way I reframe it was, once I got my daughter, the daughter had our first child, my daughter, I was like, I need more energy for this for my daughter. So I'm going to go for a run. And the thing that I did was, instead of it, like how I reframed it was, I was like, oh, I'm going for a run because it's going to give me more energy. And then I stacked it with, what else can I do while I'm running that I enjoy doing? So it's like, oh, I like listening to podcasts, so I can have a podcast. And then the next thing, I was like, after the run, the reward was I'll go for a swim in the ocean while it's cold, if it's in winter or whatnot. And I found that that was just that's enough for me to do it.
Yes. I think you've got to find your reason to get you through the difficult period. Any habit change is actually relatively easy after you've changed the habit. It's that difficult period in the middle. Smokers call it withdrawal. Smokers can't get through withdrawal until they do. And then when they're on the other side, they go, it was easy. And my sister-in-law smoked for 42 years because she couldn't get through withdrawal, which is a very ugly feeling for a short period of time. But it's so ugly that, it's only can't get through a week of it. Eventually she got through it. And that was by putting herself in a situation like you described, where the benefits were so high. There were so many benefits that she just went with it. And of course, now she says, I wish I did that 30 years before. And so I think when you stack the benefits, you get it. I say to people who, when people say to me, I don't like going to the gym, I say, well, the gym, it's not for you to like, mate. It's for you to do. The alternative is you go back to our heritage, which is, 60,000 years ago, we were all walking around in the jungle looking for food. That means you're walking all day. So, okay, if you don't like going to the gym, that's okay. You don't have to go to the gym. Just walk all day. If you're happy walking all day, well, you don't have to go to the gym.
Yeah.
Personally, I'd rather go to the gym, get over and done with.
Yeah.
But, lots of people go to the gym because of the privacy and get their podcast going or their music or whatever. For many people, the only time in their day when they get to listen to their favorite music is when they're at the gym. Well, why wouldn't you go for that? Like if you go to a concert, why wouldn't you have a concert in your ears while you're at the gym? Like to me, it's kind of,
yeah, very interesting. And one last thing, I think the biggest thing, I think we touched on it, was the breath work. Like I remember doing, I think it was about 2015 when I was getting signed off with your coaching. We did a breath work session. I think it was a 3-day, could have been 4 days, and it was such a profound thing for me at the time. Like I remember, all the things you'd say. If there was one thing you could give someone out of all the content that you had, is just incorporate meditation daily. And that stuck with me, and I'd do it, but it was more like a chore. And then once we did the breath work, it sort of like locked me in, where I really love doing the breath work on a day-to-day, but then it's done a full circle where now I incorporate meditation and enjoy meditation. It's sort of gotten me to a deeper self within me.
Yeah, because I think that they multiply their effect on each other. And so, I recommend meditation as a daily activity. I recommend breath work as a daily activity. I recommend mindfulness as a daily activity. We need to read something inspiring instead of the bullshit as a daily activity. There's a whole bunch of daily activities, but you can look at them and get overwhelmed. So I just say to people, pick your top 2 or 3 and focus on them, because what they will do is that they'll multiply their effect on each other. And at that point, you've got 2 or 3 things that you do that are the equivalent of 5. And in your case, breath work is enhancing meditation. Somebody else might find that, prayer helps them with meditation or mindfulness or whatever. So there are, some people are into yoga. Yoga, I call yoga physical meditation. Or Tai Chi is the same kind of thing. You've got to find your thing and introduce it into your life. Make it habitual, because as it becomes habitual, then it delivers. Until it's habitual, it's hard work. It's something you've got to remind yourself to do.
Yeah.
It's one of the few things that people don't understand about change, is that when you're learning to drive a motor car, it's difficult. Once you've learned to drive a motor car, you just do it all day, every day. If you're a taxi driver, it's all day. But for those of us who are not, then we just drive wherever we want. We don't think twice about it. And because it's become habitual. How did it become habitual? We stuck with it long enough to get past the ugly bit. And that's the same with touch typing, playing the guitar, speaking more positively, meditating, going to the gym. You just got to do it long enough to get past the ugly bit, and then it's automatic.
Yeah, powerful.
Once it's automatic, you're free. Yeah,
massive.
So that's what we specialize in, is teaching people how to get through the ugly bit.
Yeah, that's awesome stuff. And where can people find you, Paul?
Just go to our website, quantumorange.com.
Yep.
And, there's a heap of free resources there, and get a feel for what we do and how we do it. A heap of that stuff is free. So, people can benefit enormously. That's
you're also on LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook and all the socials.
I assume we are, mate.
Yeah. I see you on there. So.
Okay, cool. I don't do that, which is why I say I assume we are. Yeah. LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, like I said, I had a dabble on the updated Quantum Orange website, and there was a great free tools on there. Like one of them I did was I think there was a free tool on self-sabotage, if whether you're aware or conscious you've got the self-sabotage. I think it's a great tool to go check out.
Yeah, and things like, unlocking the confidence code and, developing resilience. And there's a whole bunch of stuff in there that, and we do that so that people can get a sense of, just how good they could be.
Yeah, awesome. Well, again, thanks for your time and value today, Paul.
Pleasure, mate.
It's been an honor to be able to have you on and hear your
Same
story.
here, mate. Thank you for having me, and good luck to everyone.
Thanks again, Paul.
Pleasure, mate.
Thank you for listening or watching another episode of Unlocked from Within. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe, and share the episode with someone you think it may help. If you'd like to learn more about Paul Blackburn, you can find him at his website, quantumorange.com, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and also YouTube. Again, thanks again for your time. Have a great day.